Get your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.
You keep information about the companies and people from whom you purchase goods or services in the Vendors tab within the Vendor Center. In QuickBooks, you keep part supply vendors, utility companies, subcontractors, and more within this list. The list of vendors tends to be one of the larger lists that you maintain. QuickBooks uses the information you enter to fill out purchase orders, bills, and checks as you make purchases for your company. You can open the Vendor Center by selecting Vendors from the menu bar and then choosing the Vendor Center command. To access the Vendors tab from within the Vendor Center, click the Vendors tab located at the left side of the Vendor Center. You can add vendors, edit vendor information, and inactivate or delete vendors that appear within this tab. To add a new vendor to this tab, click the New Vendor button that appears in the upper left corner of the Vendor Center, and then select New Vendor from the drop-down menu that appears. This will open the New Vendor window. Start by typing a unique name for this vendor into the vendor name field. Now, if you are adding a vendor to whom you owed money as of the start date of your company, then you would enter the total amount outstanding into the opening balance field and select your company file's start date from the adjacent As of Calendar selector field. You only perform this task when initially adding vendors to whom you owed money as of the start date of your company file. If you are creating a vendor that you did not owe money to as of the start date of your company's file, then you will skip the opening balance in the As of fields. Next, click the Address Info tab in the New Vendor window. You can enter the company name of the vendor into the company name field. If the vendor is an individual, you can enter that person's information into the full name fields. You can enter the vendor's job title into the job title field. You can then enter the vendor contact information that you wish to record into the next 8 fields that are available. There are 8 data field choices that are shown by default. However, for each field, you can select what data to record by choosing the name of a data field from the drop-down field labels that are shown. You then record the associated vendor information within the adjacent data field to the right of each drop-down field label. The data fields shown by default are, from top to bottom and left to right, main phone, work phone, mobile, fax, main email, CC email, website, and other one. Your choices of alternate fields for which you can substitute the default information are home phone, alternate mobile, alt fax, alt email 1, alt email 2, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, URL 1, URL 2, URL 3, URL 4, Skype ID, other 2, and other 3. In the Address Details section at the bottom of the tab, you can enter billed from and shipped from address information for the vendor. You can type the vendor's billing address directly into the Billed From text box, or you can click the Edit button to the right of the Billed From field and then enter the billing address into the fields within the Edit Address Information window that appears. Now, if you choose to enter the address information into the Edit Address Information window, then click the OK button when you're finished to display the address that you entered into the Billed From section. If the Shipped From address is the same as the Billed From address that you entered, then just click the Copy button to copy the billing information into the Shipped From text box that appears to the right. If they are not the same, you can enter the shipping address directly into the Shipped From text box. To continue entering vendor information, click the Payment Settings tab at the left side of the New Vendor window. On this tab, you enter the default purchasing information from the vendor. You can enter the account number that you have been assigned by this vendor if the vendor gives you an account number by typing it into the account number field. This number will print in the memo field of checks that you remit to this vendor. If the vendor assigns you a credit limit, enter your credit limit amount into the credit limit field. Next, use the Payment Terms drop-down field to select the default purchasing terms that you have been assigned by this vendor. You can then enter the name of the vendor as you want it to appear on checks that you issue to the vendor into the Print Name on Checks As field. Once you have entered the vendor's payment information on this tab, click the Tax Settings tab to continue. On this tab, you can enter the vendor's tax ID number for 1099 subcontractors into the Vendor Tax ID field. If the vendor is eligible for a 1099, then check the Vendor Eligible for 1099 checkbox. After entering any vendor tax information, click the Account Settings tab to continue. On the Account Settings tab, you can enter vendor account pre-fill information. You can enter up to 3 accounts, mostly commonly used expense or cost of goods accounts, that can appear automatically when you enter a bill that is received from this vendor. These accounts will then appear within the Accounts field within the bill if you select this vendor record when entering a bill. This can save you some time if you always attribute the amounts from a particular vendor to a selected expense account. So for example, if entering your telephone company as a vendor, you could select the telephone expense account from the first drop-down on this tab to have that account selected when entering a bill from this vendor in the future. Once you've entered any account information for the vendor, click the Additional Info tab to continue. On the Additional Info tab, you can use the Vendor Type drop-down to select a vendor type from the drop-down available, or you can simply enter a new vendor type directly into the Vendor Type drop-down. This allows you to classify and categorize your vendors as desired for reporting purposes. At the right side of the Additional Info tab, you will be able to enter any custom field values for any custom fields that you have created for your vendors. We will cover creating custom fields for your QuickBooks lists in a separate lesson of this chapter. Once you have finished entering the vendor information, you can click the OK button to save the new vendor record and close the window. To cancel the creation of a vendor record, you can click the Cancel button within the Add Vendor window to cancel changes and close the window. You can edit existing vendor records to add missing information or to otherwise change the vendor records if needed. To edit a vendor record, first select the name of the vendor whose information you wish to change within the vendor list in the Vendor Center. You can then either double-click on the name shown in the list or click the Edit button at the right of the Vendor Information section to the right of the vendor's list to open the Edit Vendor window. You can then make whatever changes are needed in the tabs displayed within this window and click the OK button to save the record. Like all of your QuickBooks lists, you cannot delete a list record once you have used it in a transaction. Once a record is associated with a transaction, you may only inactivate the record to hide it from view within a list. You should review Lesson 3.8 on inactivating and reactivating list items to learn how to perform this task in your QuickBooks lists. However, if you created a vendor record but did not use it in any transactions, then you can delete the record from the vendor's list. To do this, just select the record to delete from the list, and then choose Edit, and then the Delete Vendor command from the menu bar. You will then need to click OK in the confirmation message box that appears in order to permanently delete the selected record.
Like what you see? Pick up your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com /free.